Oh my God, please answer.
Hey, Dada.
Hey, hi. It's Jesse and Lauren. We have a question for you.
Okay.
And mostly probably Dad. Is he there?
He's downstairs. Hold on.
Okay. This is the best. Just like, why are
I'm
you
trying
doing?
to unpack.
Okay, sorry. I didn't know if you'd be back.
There's so much mail.
You must have so much mail. Do you or Dad remember the group called the Elgins or the Elgins? We're not sure how to pronounce it.
Did you Google it?
We did, but we can't find anyone saying it out loud.
It's Elgins.
Yes. So there's a town in Scotland called Elgin,
Oh.
but we didn't know. And I thought, well, maybe
But this
Dad
is an
knows.
American group?
Yeah, they sang Heaven Must Have Sent You.
No, Elgin sounds right, but Stephen, have you heard of a group called the Elgins? Elgins, a doo-wop group?
I mean, they're really Motown, but Dad knows doo-wop stuff.
Motown?
Yeah, he doesn't know.
Or they had a one-hit wonder?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's probably why.
All right. Well, thank you, time travelers. What?
I wouldn't think it would be with a hard G.
I don't think so.
Well, Gin is gin, so...
Yeah, Elgins. I think it's Elgins.
Me too.
That sounds like a band. Okay. Thank you. Good luck unpacking.
Thank you.
Bye. Love you guys.
Ready graphics? Ready theme?
Good evening. For your information tonight,
Hi, I'm Jesse Mullins,
And I'm Lauren Milberger,
and this is FYI.
the Murphy Brown Podcast. Jim.
Diplomatic Jim.
Just salt of the earth, Jim. Frank is charming.
Of course you did, because she looks amazing in that purple. She's so regal. So Leslie Jordan.
And on today's episode,
We'll be talking about Season 1, Episode 10. Kyle.
hello, Murphy Brown fans.
Hello, Murphy Brown and fans of information that is for you.
Did you just say hi to Murphy Brown?
Fans.
Oh, I missed that.
You're such
And
a
I'm wearing
judgmental.
headphones.
And hello, Murphy Brown, as well, if you are listening.
I was
My
gonna-
queen.
I was going to be like, you know, you and Dan Quayle need to learn that she's fictional.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
I don't-
What is fiction?
That's true. What is fiction?
Am I trash? Just gonna bring that back.
Call back.
Bring that back every time. Sorry to anyone who was probably offended by that phrase. Anywho.
Yes. So we are talking about episode 10, Kyle, written by Russ Woody.
And directed by Barnett Kellman.
It aired on January 16th, 1989.
Indeed. Oh, we wanted to talk to you guys about
Oh.
the fact that we do actually know how words work.
Yes, we do.
And we both, when we said the airing sheet, we both knew we were wrong.
Yes.
And we have since corrected ourselves.
Yes. So anyone who maybe is not keeping up on the show on each episode,
We are super smart.
yes, because there's a lot. I talked about that. I had wanted to know the titles of the Murphy Brown episodes, and this is before they were readily available. So I wrote a letter to CBS. And CBS didn't know what to do, so they sent me a sheet of all the episodes, including when the show was preempted. And it is called a release schedule,
A phrase that we were both very familiar with,
but could not pull it out of our heads.
but words are hard when you're on the spot.
when you're doing a Murphy Brown podcast every week.
I also just want to go back and just acknowledge the fact that I love that CBS, a massive conglomerate, was not prepared for the force that was child Lauren Milberger. That it was not set up for this kind of inquiry. And thus, you just got the release schedule.
It's not a question that someone asks.
It's wonderful. Anywho, I just wanted to make a quiet little applause for Tiny Lauren.
Thank you. Tiny Lauren appreciates it.
I know.
Tiny Lauren donated a lot of love.
I knew she could hear me.
The song is Heaven Must Have Sent You by the Elgins, written by Jesse.
Holland Dozier Holland.
It was the most successful recording for the group, hence why none of us have really actually heard of them, unfortunately, past this song. And it was a suggestion from Motown that they add a female vocalist.
That's something that was actually really, that stood out to me about them when we looked at them, was the fact that instead of being an all-girl group or an all-male group, it was male singers with a female singer.
Yeah, and it's funny, there are more of them, but they're always the ones that, for some reason, weren't as successful as, say, the Temptations or the Supremes.
Exactly.
And when I was younger and started researching more on Motown and this kind of music, I owned the best of the Dixie Cups. I'm just saying.
Yes, you did.
Thank you, Murphy Brown. I remember thinking, oh, who are these people? I forget the other band, but they're
There are more.
they're
but-
more one-hit wonders, oddly
Well,
enough.
it is, and I wonder if there's something that's very marketable about the all-male versus all female groups.
Sure.
And we saw that again in the 90s when the boy bands and the girl groups started coming back after being, we did have New Kids in earlier than that, but when we had the NSYNC, the 98 Degrees, the Backstreet Boys, and then we started getting a bunch of girl groups, and we got the Spice Girls, and we had all these things. There were other bands that were mixed, and so you saw like My Beloved No Doubt, you saw even unfortunately Black Eyed Peas that came in, but we had groups that were mixed, but the people who were making those big bucks were the easily marketable, this goes to this demographic kind of thing, and I wonder if that had something to do with it.
Well, Blondie, I mean, that's a big, change, obviously.
I do wonder if this phenomenon in Motown where we know a lot of all one gender band and that they were more successful had something to do with that easy marketability.
Yeah, I don't know as much about it because it's an interesting topic I hadn't thought of until in the moment, but now I want to know more about it.
I don't know much about it because I just made it up,
Yes.
but now I will continue to look into this.
So will we. We'll get back to you guys.
We'll get back to you.
We have other stuff.
On our new conjecture.
Yeah.
The Elgins, so they're a Motown group active from 62 to 67. But before that, it was actually an early name used by the Temptations in their pre-David Ruffin era. So they actually had been named that and then became the Temptations, and then this band came in and took the name.
And Gordy apparently was very adamant that they take the name.
It's so what was it about
I don't
that
know.
name? I need to know.
Maybe he just felt like he needed to recycle the name that didn't get the traction.
Exactly. Like, you have one. No one's going to know any better. Very interesting. Anywho, so here we are. We are starting our episode in a slightly different way. So as opposed to the song coming in with a stock montage or something that then leads into the action, the montage with the song playing after the title card is actually directly into the action.
Yeah, and I wonder, I feel like this was probably written in, but it makes me think all of a sudden now, with the way you're talking about it, I wonder if there are certain episodes where it's written in or they ran out of time and decided to. I mean, this feels very visual and very, body language,
You
useful.
get so much information about what happens this episode in this opening with no lines.
And they do that a lot. Like this is something that will, become repetitive. But for some reason, I just thought, I wonder if sometimes it was just something that they put over or how much it's actually written in.
Well, and we come in and we see this unusual figure that we have not seen before, a man of diminutive stature.
He's 4'11", by the way.
He is 4'11", and he's such a cute little button, by the way. You will find out that this is Kyle Whitsett, and he is not having his best day. I think I would say nervous and timid might be good words for him. And he's smaller than everyone. And he is being brought in. They're setting him up in a chair, putting the mic on, Murphy's favorite thing. And he looks very nervous. He spills coffee on himself, and then the entire place. And again, everyone note there are no lines happening during this. It's just the song, so you have to pay attention. So everyone's rushing around to try and fix it. They start cleaning him. Murphy cleans the seat herself, and Miles rips off his shirt and tie by the cameras and hands it to him, which one of my favorite visuals of this opening is Miles in his undershirt.
Yes.
Looking so casual. And I realize we have not seen Miles looking so casual quite yet.
Well, what I love about this is sort of the teamwork. Like one of my favorite things is to watch on stage professionals during the scene changes.
Oh, I love a scene change.
Love a good scene change. Whether it's the actors doing it, the actual crew people doing it. There's just something about professionals just getting stuff done.
You see how capable they are.
Yeah.
They're super capable. They know what they're doing, and they're like, okay, we're on live television. We have to fix. It's just what happened with the shooting scenario, where it's like they are on live television. This stuff, stuff happens. You have to be ready to go and fix things. The last thing they need is a guy covered in coffee. So, okay, somebody has a shirt. Can't be that guy because he's on camera. Can't be that guy. This guy behind the camera, he's going to take his shirt off. And Miles is the producer, so he's going to make sure his show goes well. And this is a big interview.
And then you see, Jim and Corky and Frank are nervous and they can't really move. And then, maybe their last looks, which is a word when you sort of check, for people who don't know, check the makeup right before you go out. So Jim checks his hair because they have to focus on this guy. And then also the tension of it. And, we talked about this in a past episode that this is another great example of making the show live brings the conflict.
Yeah, it raises that stake immediately. So we, speaking of of Corky, can we talk about her purple blazer?
I literally wrote, Corky looks great in purple.
Of course you did, because she looks amazing in that purple. She's so regal.
Also, though, Murphy is sort of wearing kind of the white blue version of her red jacket.
Yes, I think she got like the same jackets in multiple colors.
Yeah, or
it's not exactly the same, but
It looks very same.
It's very. She has a style, and it works. It's her brand. Mm-hmm. It's very much her brand. It's the it's white and blue, right?
Yes.
In this opening, yes. Okay.
It's blue, and it's that royal. She wears a lot of blue in this
She
episode.
does. She wears very saturated colors in this. A lot of them do actually.
Just we
Frank
pointed that-
wears a
I
really
love that
saturated
color.
shirt later
Yeah.
too.
But we have pointed out watching this, at least I have, that they wear a lot of blue. Corky and her wear a lot of
No,
blue
they wear
this
a
season.
lot of blue.
We'll have to talk to somebody
I like
about that.
I mean, they wear
love
blue when they dress the same.
Just as a brunette, I wear a lot of jewel tones.
Oh, me too.
And there's a lot of colors that blondes can wear that I just don't look good in.
See, for
but she's
me-
wearing a lot of stuff that I could wear.
For me, the jewel tones aren't about my hair color; it's about my skin tone.
That too.
So, like, I can wear things that blondes wear, but it's because of my skin tone that matters.
Maybe.
Like, there are certain pastel colors I can't wear. It has nothing to do with what color my hair is doing. It's what it does to my face. If I wear yellows, I look dead. So, we find out that Mr. Kyle Whitsett is on camera because he was released from jail, a 1973 jail robbery, in which he was, they have proven that he was wrongly convicted.
This whole thing reminds me of Serial.
Oh, very much. Like the journalist who got really into it and then starts potentially overturn a verdict. Mm-hmm. Which we
Yeah.
find out was Murphy's thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, that was the first thing I was like, oh, this is sort of like Murphy's version of Sarah Koenig.
So this, the story took Murphy 5 months, right?
5 months, yes.
5 months. And so this is a crowning glory kind of thing. This is this guy, and you meet him, and he's super sweet. He's very awkward. He's very nervous. To say a terrible interview is probably generous. It doesn't go very well.
Yeah, it's a great example of how good an interviewer Murphy is.
Yes, because she
she's-
gets anything out of this.
Yes. she is trying to find a diamond in the piece of coal.
Well, her first thing is, how does it feel to be free? And he says, for a while there, I thought I was going to throw up. And she goes, we'll just stick with overwhelmed. Okay, we're just going to repackage this for
I
you.
wrote, he is a horrible interview.
He is, but and I think the reason why it does well is because he's very endearing. How long was he in jail at this point? This is 89, and he went to jail for a 73.
Yeah. Well,
This guy he's a young man at this point, so he's been in there for some pretty formative young male
Yeah.
years, and so he's not really an on-camera persona.
No.
But you can see he's very endearing.
he didn't really learn his social skills.
He didn't.
He was too young.
He was way too young, and you can see, regardless of what he went through, like his personality was probably not the most astute. Well, we're gonna say he doesn't read a room well.
Probably a born klutz.
Yeah, and I don't think prison helped that much. I will say he has one crowning moment in this interview in which he shares that a lot of guys in my cell block think you're real pretty. Now, most of them think Mr. Fontana is prettier.
And here's the thing about that line, because it's an old joke.
It's an old joke.
But the way that, and we'll talk about him in a moment,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Leslie Jordan delivers it in his unique way.
Prettier.
And kind of goes up a little bit with sort of like almost frays his voice a tiny bit, which is a natural thing for him. He's not pushing it. Just makes it so fabulous. It's so endearing.
Well, and Frank's expression
Look at
after
the
this.
look. He doesn't know what to do.
Also, because when they say that and they make it about his appearance, I can't stop looking at Frank's toupee now and his like softly feathered, lovely hair that makes him look so much different. I'm like, aw.
Frank is charming.
He's very charming. I think he's attractive with or without. But I love
You
that.
mean with or without the rug, not with
The
or
rug.
without the charm.
No, he's only attractive because of the charm.
Gotcha.
People are. You can be an Adonis, and if you have no charm, I'm not going to think you're cute.
I agree.
That's all I'm saying. So Murphy just kind of takes that moment and just goes, back to you, Jim. And we close out the air. And so everyone comes forward and they're all being very generous and they're wishing him luck. And one of my favorite moments is when Miles pats him on the shoulder as he walks by, and sweet Kyle's just like, ow. As if Miles is this like brute. Like nobody else hits him in a way that Leslie Jordan winces at, but for some reason Tiny Miles makes him. I don't know, maybe he hits him harder because he's still wearing his clothes. And Corky says this really sweet, endearing thing of, I just know you'll be the one in 20 who makes it.
So honest, Corky.
So on.
No filter. No filter.
Zero filter. And he starts saying his goodbyes. And this is the beginning of us figuring out that Kyle doesn't have much. And he has this long extended goodbye. And I wrote bye every time in this recap that I did because it's his wonderful Chattanooga
good.
accent. But he's just saying, he says goodbye, bye, keeps saying bye, says goodbye to he says goodbye guys to the entire crew and everything like that. And he's just taking forever to leave.
It's such a great scene also because it really sets it up well that, they're giving these sort of platitudes, right? And then
Yep.
they're going away.
Yeah.
They're gone.
They're like, you're so amazing. We're all rooting for you. Bye.
Bye. Push out the door.
So speaking of his delivery, because really I want to know how much of the script was a bunch of goodbyes and byes and how much he added in I'm positive he added in a bunch of variants, but I want to see how it was written.
Well, here's the thing. This show is really rarely improv, as we've talked about.
yeah.
It's really set on script.
Yeah.
But it's written throughout the week. So I can only imagine
They
that
added things for him.
Yeah, based on what he was doing.
Yeah.
Because he's so unique.
And just his choices of when he pauses and waits, like we'll talk later about him at the elevator every time. He's a genius. So Leslie Jordan.
Yes, let's talk about Leslie Jordan.
Let's talk about
We're
Leslie
just going to have
Jordan.
to do it now.
Yep. So the first thing I think of with Leslie Jordan is that I feel like he's the performer that while you know him, you're not really sure where you knew him first. Now, most people will recognize him as Beverly Leslie from Will and Grace, who is Karen's nemesis.
Which he won an Emmy for.
He did, and he was amazing. I also love the fact that they spelled Leslie the way he spells his first name in the character name.
Well, I think I know why that might have happened.
You want to go ahead?
Watching a bunch of interviews with Leslie to prep for this, he said that his role on Will and Grace was originally played by Joan Collins.
Which would make sense.
Yes. But after the first rehearsal or so, she just didn't feel that it was something she wanted to do, and they brought him in. So I wonder if they had to change the name.
I just love the idea that, okay, Joan Collins isn't working out. Who should we bring in? And it's Leslie Jordan. Like, that's such a credit to his unique career that he can just fill in for Joan Collins.
And then because of him, it became a recurring role. It was not a recurring role when he
Just
was booked.
wicked. I
Yeah.
love him. One of the things I find really interesting about Leslie Jordan's career is that we've all seen him in stuff for years and years and decades. But this role in Murphy Brown was super early in his career.
I was shocked.
So his first IMDb credit, which granted, if you know actors, a lot of people are working that are not on IMDb for many years before they get that first credit. But he started in these particular credits in 1986, and Murphy Brown was 1989, and he only had a handful of roles prior. He had 10 episodes on The People Next Door in 1989, but I'm not sure where that fell around Kyle, because it was the same year. So he was still relatively new, and one of the things I really appreciate, I found this great article, which I will link in the show notes, from Philadelphia Magazine. They did an interview with him in 2014 when he was about to do Southern Baptist Sissies, which just makes me so happy for him. So he shares in this interview that he had been living in Los Angeles for 30 years. And I said, wow, in all that time you never lost your Southern accent. And he said, I sure haven't. I tried early in my career, but then I gave up, and that's when I started working.
Yeah, and so what's so amazing about him is that he has so much confidence here, and he's so himself in the sense of he is exactly the type of character that we have always seen him play.
Yes.
And so a lot of times when you are that specific as an actor, it can be a hindrance and it can be a plus.
Yes.
There were probably more roles at the beginning of his career that he did not get. But because he's so specific, when he did get a role, no one else would be able to play it but him.
No.
And once that started to happen, that was when he started to book more roles.
Well, when he was true to himself and what he does well and not worrying about his accent and trusting that that could end up being a plus, it created a character. That's the thing, is like, if you're a Leslie Jordan, you stay the course, you stay true to yourself, to the point that then when people need a Leslie Jordan, you are the person they're looking
the
for.
only person who can do that.
And then you become a Leslie Jordan who also plays Joan Collins's roles. Like, that is who, and it's that sense of self and that integrity in who he is. It makes me so happy.
But it must be so hard at the beginning
my
because
gosh.
people might go, "You're great."
They'll tell you you're uncastable,
Yeah, I don't know where to put you. I mean, they told Diane Weiss that she squinted too much.
which is a lie.
She needed to stop.
She squints the perfect amount.
Told Allison Janney she was too tall.
Lies. they're the people who remind us that we want individuals and that's who we connect with, not just cookie cutters that don't have any specifics we can latch onto.
No one is Leslie Jordan.
No.
No one can be him.
I mean, I'm going to try, but I can't be Leslie Jordan. I also just want to share a quick quote from this that makes me so
ahead.
happy. They say, being from the South, you must have been able to relate to the characters in Southern Baptist Sissies. Did you have a hard time growing up in church in the South? Just in case you guys are wondering, Leslie is an out and gay man. He said, I did, but it was more internal. I really wanted to be a really good Christian, like some of the boys in the movie. I was baptized 14 times. Every time the preacher would say, come forward, sinners, I'd say, ooh, I was out in the woods with that boy. I better go forward. My mother thought I was being really dramatic. She'd say, Leslie, you're already saved. And I'd say, well, I don't think it took.
He told some really great stories about the fact that he wanted to play with dolls and sew and things like that. And so his mother created sort of a little area for him to do it away from his father, who was sort of a career army guy.
Oh, yeah.
But then he talked about how he's like, this was like the 50s. His father bought him for Christmas a bride doll.
I know.
And put under the tree. And that, that must have been such a big thing for his father to do.
I mean, because especially in that time period with an army man father, like that, you could not have felt safe to be who you are. And that kind of story is very uncommon, especially for that time period, to have any semblance of acceptance for that kind of what was considered at the time deviance.
Yeah, it was
That's
really
beautiful.
beautiful. He also talked in an interview he didn't like sort of the hillbilly rock and roll, that he was a big Motown fan. And I
Hey.
thought,
What a good show for you.
I know. Also interesting, he has been sober for 20 years
It's very impressive.
and once shared a jail cell with Robert Downey Jr.
Who also learned some lessons about being sober.
Yes, he did. Leslie has written several books, including My Trip Down the Pink Carpet, which was turned into a one-man show produced by Lily Tomlin, and her wife and frequent collaborator Jane Wagner, who wrote Search for Signs of Intelligent Life, one of my
so
favorite
good.
stage performances I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh.
But we'll talk more about that when we get to Lily Tomlin.
Yes, because do we have some fangirling to do there?
Yes, we do.
One of the things I just think is really special about him, he's a very compassionate, empathic person when he talks about his young life and when he talks about collaborators. I love watching interviews. If you can find any interviews on YouTube
Yeah,
of him. And
he's funny and insightful.
He's
and
very insightful and very kind when he could. It'd be very easy for someone who's been so different his entire life to be bitter. He talks really lovingly about his mother, Peggy Ann, and being very compassionate about the fact that she supported him, but and he says never really understood him. And one of the things that when we talked about his father died when he was like 11.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so how special that story is for him to know that he had even what might have even been a modicum of acceptance before he would never know. As someone who lost a parent when I was still basically a child, those kinds of things are super important. And I think it's just, he has a very lovely story, and it's really worth looking into his writing because he's really insightful and kind. He's very special. We moved to the FYI offices.
Yes. Murphy's talking to her secretary on the phone, wearing a fabulous turquoisey sweater.
I feel like I've owned that sweater.
Actually, funny that you say that, because I'm pretty sure this is Candice Bergen's sweater.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's a good color for her. And if I
Yeah.
was her, I would have stolen it from the costume
She
department.
looks amazing in turquoise.
She's in it all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't quite realize, maybe that's why I love it so much, but she's also in that belt all the time.
Yes, which we also are pretty sure is her belt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen her wear that sweater, which is longer, with just a belt in a behind the scenes.
Oh, I
So I'm pretty sure it's actually hers.
That makes sense.
And, hey, why not? Or maybe she stole it from the costume department. I do not know.
Either way, Candice Bergen has great style.
Yes. And she goes, she wants to be clear that the secretary is telling her, what she's telling her is that she can't come to work today because of a Jewish holiday that she can't think of.
Which,
And then the best part is she goes, I'm sorry, Ms. McCall. Such a non-Jewish name. Rosh Kippur doesn't quite make it. Also, by the way, is that Mickey Mouse Mao behind her?
I think so. I do think so. I kept looking at it.
I think that's Mickey Mouse Mao. So Miles enters. It's a red letter day. They got a 35 share on the overnights. This stuff always cracks me up because it's like it's not a thing anymore.
Hey, we're a TV station.
Yeah. It's the 90s. Well, not the 90s yet. Murphy is going through her Rolodex trying to find a secretary. Miles is drinking a soda. This is what I wrote. Why is Miles drinking a soda? Why? It feels so random.
It gets answered in just a moment.
That's the thing is everyone comes in and
They're here to annoy her.
they are with the food and the drink.
It's for me, I think it's because he's setting up what happens when they all come in with their stuff. But it's this sudden water cooler that becomes her office that is it's so disrespectful to her and her like sanctum that is her office.
Yeah.
That like they wouldn't come in drinking something in her office. Like they wouldn't do that kind of thing because you just don't mess with Murphy's office. But I feel like it's a certain like casual like, oh man, we're all such good people right now moment that they do that they like don't quite realize that they're doing it in the wrong place.
They're all self-absorbed about
Yes.
they're on this high, like, look what we did.
They're all so magnificent.
Which is, a lot about what this episode is about, as well as just being sort of this funny character piece for Kyle is, they're being all high and mighty about how they saved this man's life, but are not thinking about the consequences of afterwards.
Well, it made me think about when somebody said, if an altruist doesn't tell you about the good deed they did it really do any good? Like,
I haven't heard that, and yet I feel like I have.
yep. It's because it's our life.
So
Did you post about your Indiegogo donation yet?
no, I didn't. Yeah.
I know someone who has a tendency to want to talk about how woke she is.
Oh no.
I was like, I don't think it's like you don't get a sign name if you're not of the deaf community. It is given to you. That's what I learned when I went to the school with the
interesting.
deaf children in grade school. So the culture may have changed since I was 10, but at the time, this was what I was taught in the school with the deaf children in Anchorage, Alaska. But it's that thing of don't start calling yourself woke. If you are the privileged white girl, let someone else acknowledge your efforts.
I agree.
If you tell me how woke you are, I don't think you're quite woke.
I agree 120%.
Anywho.
Yes. So everyone is trying to take credit for, Murphy's story and saving Kyle from jail and wrong conviction.
I like Miles telling Frank that he lies like a rug.
Yeah. No, I love their relationship.
They're boys, man. I
Yeah,
love
but
it.
like it came really quick, which I didn't realize until, watching this in order. They really sort of, bonded with each other. Also, I know that this was her glasses in the last episode, but I do really love Murphy's glasses.
I love Murphy
I don't
glasses.
agree with Corky. Also, I should note, I wrote a note here, even though it's from another section, and it's in my notes now, so I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
The actor that I thought was Marv is incorrect. Is actually an actor named Scott Lawrence.
Oh.
The one in the elevator
Yes.
from I Would Have
Yes.
Danced All Night. Known as Office Worker Scott. He just was not credited in that episode.
Oh, office worker Scott.
Yeah. Now everyone's outside the office and Kyle is here and he's dressed in the last outfit he bought in 1972.
He bought it brand new,
He did. Frank calls it groovy.
which is not really a compliment when he says it.
It actually reminds me of this episode of The Golden Girls when Martin Mull is a shut-in
Martin Mull.
since like the late 60s.
Yep.
And he's wearing a very similar outfit, only with love beads and like a fringe vest. And you can tell that Kyle is lonely.
Well, he says this stuff about he's being very positive, but you can tell that he's not doing very well. And he keeps saying he's like, oh yeah, being out in the world with my friends, and he's gesturing to all of them, and you can tell that, as was kind of implied in his exit in the last scene, these are his friends. He has no one else out there because he hasn't been a young adult to build a community in the world.
His parents could be gone,
We
as
don't,
far as we know.
Yeah, we don't know. And he says, they ask him about jobs, and he says, should have gotten the computer training program at the prison instead of interpretive dance. Because he wasn't, first of all, he probably wasn't thinking he was ever going to get out. And second of all, and this is something I kind of want to talk about, was the transition to the re-entry for prisoners
Yeah.
in our country. This is something that we see in a lighter touch with Kyle, but the idea of getting our prisoners rehabilitated and ready for the workforce if they're going back out. Because, for example, this young man has no skills to be in the real world, including the ability to read a room and social skills in general. But we talk about the fact that while it has gone down in increments over the last couple of years, the mass incarceration in America is through the roof for the world. And I have a great Rolling Stone article that just came out today. There are quotes about, it's time for change. It will require both altering our sentencing laws and getting rid of things like mandatory minimums, which, guys, mandatory minimums for pot smoking is insane for nonviolent crimes. which I could go on to that forever. But it said, as well as making sure that people who are currently incarcerated can be successfully reincorporated back into our society. And that's a huge thing because and I'm not even going to try and pretend that I have the right quote for the number, but the percentage of repeat offenders that happen within a very short time of when they leave, that they reoffend. And the main reason for that is that they're not set up for success to get back into a workforce or just into the world in general.
That's all they know.
I'm going to also share on the website, there's a great article, now granted it is from 2015, but it's still worth the read, about programs that are helping prisoners live again on the outside. It's from the Huffington Post. And there's a program that is specifically for reformed convicts who help on the first day that somebody is released, pick them up and show them the ropes because they understand best.
Oh, that's great.
And there are things like that. And if you have the means to look into this or to help fund or to advocate for this is, like I said, it's a lighter touch in this episode, but it's really something to think about. If we don't set people up to succeed once they're out of the prison, they're just going to go back or worse. And I just think that this episode is maybe this wasn't the goal of the episode, this particular soapbox, but I think that he is such a lovable way to get that kind of message out there because he's doing his darndest. He has no skills.
Yeah, he's a klutz.
He's a sweet little klutz who kind of ruins everything.
Well, it's really heartbreaking that he can't adjust, and he tries to say goodbye and it's very awkward.
Oh my God, his bye.
Bye. Bye.
And he's just standing at the elevator and the doors aren't opening and he just keeps turning around to say bye.
And everyone feels bad. And then, Murphy says, which is, the crux of the episode, is we report stories. It's our job to be objective and uninvolved. It ends there. And Jim agrees, but he wants to help the little fella.
Little Kyle.
And Murphy feels that it's best that he fends for himself. She has work to do. She has to find a secretary. And then Miles has an idea.
Cut to...
If I can just say real quickly, this episode is very unique. It is not the type of episode that we will ever see again.
No, continue.
And I think that's a testament to Russ Woody and how unique of a writer he is.
Outside the box, always,
which is great. But also in some of the visual elements. I don't remember an episode coming up where we literally have that sitcom, I have an idea. And then the
cut
next
to
idea. It reminds me of the close-up on the door.
Yep.
And
when
it
she
might
threw
just,
the dart.
Yeah, that Barnett maybe he's just playing around. But that's sort of interesting to see, this definitely feels like it's not my favorite Russ Woody episode. Some of his episodes are some of my absolute favorites.
Yeah, because they're standouts.
They're standout. And so this is a standout, but it's interesting to me that it doesn't feel like what we know Murphy Brown to be.
No, and we talked about the fact that because it's really focused on the guest star.
Yeah.
And not on her. I mean, one of Murphy's biggest obstacles in this episode is just trying to get her job done, as opposed to the kind of heart and the soul of the piece moving and the arc being for Kyle.
Yeah.
The gang learn things about themselves and Murphy goes back and forth trying to figure out if she's doing the right thing or not because she's just selfishly trying to get her day over with. But the actual arc of this episode is in Kyle.
Yeah, and that's a testament to Leslie Jordan.
Oh, he's so wonderful.
And that's what I think also is just he is so bright as a character and an actor that it takes away from the episode. He it's like he's in 3D.
Yeah.
And the rest of the episode isn't. And that's no one's fault, I think.
It might be his 70s garb.
Maybe.
It's just real psychedelic. Speaking of, he's sitting at the secretary's desk now. And he's in front of a typewriter. And his outfit is quite eye-popping.
I wrote down, he's dressed like he just walked off the set of Laugh-In.
It's so real.
Lily Tomlin reference.
I mean, hey. Yeah, he has this bright shirt and a contrasting tie. And he is, I wrote this down, the only word that came to me as he's working on this typewriter is he's pecking at it.
With the ABC song.
He's singing ABC song while he's pecking at his typewriter. And weirdly enough, I know a friend who kind of she types very fast, but she only types with like her index fingers. I don't know how she does it because I feel like I would have assumed you would look like this if you only typed with your index fingers or something like that. And she types so quickly. And the day that I noticed it, I realized I could never sit on the same side of a computer with her because it throws me off.
Oh, yes.
It's so She's very efficient, and I love you if you know who you are.
I had to take a typing class in middle school.
Oh, yeah, I took typing classes.
So I can type with both hands very quickly.
Oh, I always have. My parents got me I think because they knew that the computers were the wave of the future when I was a kid. And also my mom worked for 47 years as a professor at a school, and the school required all of the students to have computer access, and specifically laptops for the classroom.
Fantastic.
And so in the the 90s and the early 2000s, that was to say that. So if people couldn't afford their own, the school gave them a laptop.
That's fantastic.
So my mom was one of the first people in my community to have a laptop that she brought home, a computer for work. And so I would play on my mom's computer because I thought that was so fancy and cool. And so my parents actually got me Reader Rabbit educational documents that helped me learn how to type and so on when I was a kid. So I've always assumed, and I remember I used to know the difference between a QWERTY keyboard and whatever the other keyboard was. Murphy gets off the elevator.
Hot damn, Murphy.
Ooh, that outfit.
Love it so much.
That royal blue and
love
the white
blue.
blouse and the belt. Can we talk about this purple,
We're like
blue,
this-
indigo belt?
We're literally the same person, Jesse.
We're very into this fashion.
The belt is like sort of a royal purpley blue.
It's like a lighter indigo. It's like a dark periwinkle light indigo.
I just love this. And then the white shirt. Just, this is great. Want this outfit.
I love it. I appreciate that this moment. Kyle has I feel like he's locked into the Murphy Brown secretary mode because his "Hi, Miss Brown, did you have a nice lunch?" The way he yells it out is very much like many of her secretaries we have
She
seen.
did not have a nice lunch.
She didn't. It's funny. Kyle sent the Secretary of State to the wrong restaurant, to Captain Larry's Chicken Roundup. He had to wear a hat. Was that?
And a bib, I believe.
And a bib.
Right?
Yes. I'm shocked it wasn't the Crab Shack from before at this
Really,
point.
right? You can have a thing. Now, I did some research because I thought, okay, so I want to know who the Secretary of State was at this time.
That's my girl.
It's interesting depending on how you see it.
Yes.
Because you could say, well, this episode takes place when it aired, which is January 16th.
But it was written.
No, but the episode before this is the inauguration, which is January 20th.
No, what I'm saying, though, is that it's when it aired Secretary of State or when it was written Secretary of State.
Okay.
Right?
We have to assume it's when it's aired.
I mean, yes.
But so this is supposed to take place after the inauguration. Well, on inauguration day, January 20th, James Baker became Secretary of State.
Yes.
So it has to be James Baker.
Yes.
But technically, they aired the inauguration episode before the actual inauguration.
Yes.
So it took me a bit to figure that out.
We're just...
Yeah. So it's James Baker.
Yeah.
James Baker was wearing a bib and a hat.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Good on him. She notices his typing, which made me feel not as crazy for noticing that.
Oh, it's definitely a thing.
And he shared that Big Eddie One Arm taught him how to type. So this is the way he does it. And then proceeds to get the ribbon from the typewriter all kinds of tangled. And after this happens, we start seeing the klutz. And Murphy can't find files. She comes back out and is like, "Where's my ant farm?" Well, Kyle wanted them to be able to have a better view, and it was so cloudy on that
Intentions are really good.
His intentions were very good, and he was
Yeah.
trying to give them a better view through the glass, and then it broke. It dropped to the ground, and he said, "Boy, those little things can skedaddle."
I loved those ants.
I loved those ants.
What I love about this is that, again, this is another thing that I feel like is not in other episodes, is that the ant is sort of...
The ant infestation throughout the episode.
Yes, it's so subtle.
It's so
you
great. You see the person spraying for it later.
Yeah, and then Jim is just talking to Murphy and he just hits his arm.
Miles kills one, right?
Yeah.
They're just
And
her
it-
poor ants.
I just love it. I love it, but it's just interesting that I was like, I don't think that they do this.
It's a really subtle, long joke.
And they're trying something, and maybe
love
it just
that.
didn't work for them, or they just decided to do other things. I mean,
Well, I also like the symbolism of the annoyance of ants and the way that he is.
you're so smart.
The thing that if you're at a picnic bench or a picnic and you're eating and so on, and you don't quite realize that one's crawling up your shoulder, and right when you're feeling comfortable, you have to flick it away and that kind of thing. And they're not really a negative thing, unless they're fire ants that are biting you. They're not
Murphy loves them.
exactly. they're not a bad thing, but they're everywhere and annoying and getting in your stuff, and now you can't eat. And like, I feel like that's a bit of maybe a little symbolism for what Kyle
would be
is.
surprised. And then one of my favorite scenes for character and in the episode of Murphy is in her and Miles.
Oh god, it's so good. So she says, I need a secretary. She can't take him anymore. He has to, like, his idea didn't work. And Miles has this moment of clarity and it's just like, okay, we need to talk about this. And so he says, we need to talk about this parade of secretaries you've gone through. It's always their fault. Isn't that right, Murphy? And she goes, yes. And he says that he proceeds to kind of give her some wisdom and then says the golden line of getting along with other people is a reflection of getting along with yourself.
And then we become the audience of Happy Days.
Yes. And she says, I got your reflection right here, pal. And like holds up the fist at
If
him.
no one gets that reference, it's because the audience is like, oh.
I love the audience in this episode, by the way.
They're great.
They're so good. And yeah, she says, I got your reflection right here, pal, and fists in his face.
And I wrote, I love you, Murphy. Because it's also such a thing of like, you know, this feminine thing.
Yeah.
Of like, well, you know.
Maybe you should be nicer.
Because maybe it's about you.
She's like, I'll give you nice in your
and
face.
she's just
right
like,
now.
I don't really care.
And then she sits down, and one of my favorite Leslie Jordan moments in this entire episode, he brings out a file for her, and she says, it's the wrong file, Kyle. And he goes, you're a poet, and you don't know it. He's so excited.
He has the best intentions.
Oh. And then Jim arrives, and Murphy's struggling with the ribbon. And one of my favorite things Leslie Jordan says, he says Mr. Dial, but because of his accent, I just wrote Mr. Dial. It's just long.
It's like
Molasses. And
also Jim, and again, not a fan of brown suits, but Jim can wear a brown
Jim
suit.
wears a brown suit.
Also, I wrote down, did Charles Kimbrough get a haircut?
Maybe. He does look a little different, doesn't he?
Is it bad that I'm noticing that?
I notice many things about my sweet Jim.
I know, but I was like, I'm watching this so much now.
I think he got a haircut.
That I know that he may have gotten a haircut.
And I like that, Kyle goes back in and he's trying to work on stuff. And he comes in, he's, were those books on your shelf in an order? Or, we see Jim kill an ant. And he shares, he is very fond of the little fella. So he's inviting Kyle over for dinner. Frank comes out. He's like, hey, I want to grab you for a moment. And he says he has tickets to, is it a Celtics game?
It's a Celtics game, yeah.
Celtics game?
Bullets and Celtics.
Oh, bullets. That's why I couldn't think of it. And Jim has like pulled Kyle aside and is like, don't let her bother you. And
See, I love this.
No, I love this. That
Everyone's like, assumes that Murphy is being Murphy.
Yeah.
And that he's not as big a deal as she's mentioning.
No,
And then
she's being Murphy.
Yeah.
And they've all had to deal with
her
it.
bark is worse than her bite.
Yes.
And they're nice people.
Yes.
But just don't let, Murphy's being Murphy.
And she'll get used to. I mean, that's what they did with Miles too. Like he could just be another Miles because sweet puppy dog creatures really annoy Murphy, but then she warms to them.
I mean, Murphy is sort of the reporter who cried wolf.
A little bit.
Everything is exasperating and a big deal. And so, it makes sense that they will go, oh, she's being Murphy.
Well, and also Frank has this line that I was kind of like, Frank, where in his apologizing for Murphy, he says she hasn't been the same since she got back from the Betty Ford clinic. And I was like, Frank.
I feel like that was sort of a loving thing.
It was, but for me, it's saying it to a stranger.
Yeah.
Though granted, a harmless stranger. But I was like, Frank, that's an overshare.
But I also think that they think that Kyle is so sweet. They're upset with Murphy.
Yeah,
for what
exactly.
she's
They all
doing.
think she's being so mean.
Yeah.
And at this point, while this is happening, Murphy is also now her own secretary.
Yes.
Which is one of my favorite bits that Candace has in this
She doesn't
episode.
know what to do.
And she's like picking up the phone and trying to put people on hold, and she still has the ribbon on her, and she's trying to get Kyle to go get more ribbon.
Kyle the ribbon.
Then Corky comes in. Of course, she's being sweet to Kyle, and Kyle offers the basketball tickets to her, and she says, I hate basketball. Tall men frighten me. So not for her. But she has a great friend named Barbara that she'll set up with him. And
I feel like this is what Corky does when men ask her out. She doesn't want to go out with.
Yep.
You know what? It's not for me.
I've got this friend,
I've got a friend.
I wonder how many dates Barbara's gone on.
Oh, no.
And she has a line that we have been talking about for a while, which is, don't let Murphy make you crazy. She gets this way around the 18th of every month. Mark that day on your calendar. We all have.
Yes.
Again, another very ballsy and much appreciated woman joke.
Yes. And so I appreciate it more coming from Corky than I do
Yes.
coming from Miles.
Except
and I know
it's
it's
the
different.
woman.
Yes, and I know it's different than a tampon joke. Although I have to say, talking to Corby and knowing what was behind it, that
Yes.
it's these jokes. I'm going to the tampon joke that I said I didn't like is about demystifying your period.
Yes.
I now like the jokes.
Oh, I love them
and
now.
I'm okay
Yep.
with them. So this you might think would be under that umbrella, but it's different to me because it's not Miles. It's
saying
Corky
it.
is saying it.
So having that kind of joke come from another woman takes away the stigma. I remember somebody teaching me about whether or not you are a fan of cursing. There is something to be said about taking the power back
Agreed.
from an offensive term and finding the way to say, oh, if I say it, now you're uncomfortable. If you use it as a slander or a slur, that makes you feel powerful. But if I take away its effect on me and I make it so that it's my joke now, you don't like it so much anymore, do you? And there's something that I love about using this joke in a woman's mouth.
I agree. So
Also because Corky's getting so salty in this episode, and I love it.
yes, I feel like Murphy's rubbing off on Corky a little bit.
Yes, and I love it.
So we cut to Murphy at Phil's with a large word processor.
Oh my gosh, it's huge.
I had something similar. But yes, it is a huge, I wrote so big.
It's so big.
Frank comes in, why is Murphy working in the office? Geo wonder why. Kyle's getting to Frank. Kyle accidentally stapled Frank's mail to his tie for the 4th time. Then Jim, Corky, and Miles all rush in. They're all escaping from Kyle. Frank comments that they already had lunch. Like, why are they there? They're all trying to be nice about Kyle. And then Jim,
Diplomatic Jim.
just salt of the earth Jim, goes, are you kidding? The guy's a loser.
Guy's a loser.
I was even like, Jim,
I know. I was like, oh,
a loser? No one's a loser.
oh man, if Jim says it, and well, because he says,
You want to do it?
yes, please.
Okay.
So he shares that, and basically they're all saying like they all did this one thing for him that they had set up in the last scene, and then he takes it so far. So he came over for dinner with Doris and Jim, and now he shows up every night for dinner. He said last night he danced for us. Doris tried to kill him with a dustbuster. I love Doris so much.
I love her so much, and it's because I am, of course, now picturing Janet Carroll,
Yes.
who is so fantastic. But of course, before this, she wasn't Cat. No one knew what Doris looked like.
No.
She could have been like Pickles,
Yes.
the wife from Dick Van Dyke
Yes.
Show, or Norm's wife, where we never met them.
And
But I'm so glad we met her.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So yes, Doris tried to kill him with a dustbuster.
Phil joins in. Phil really hates him, and he's thinking of putting in a real high doorknob.
It's such a
By the way, speaking of Leslie Jordan's height,
yes.
do you know that technically in the United States, 4'11" is considered a disability and you can get money
Yes.
from the government?
Yes.
That blew my mind.
I know some really short people.
I found this out years ago, but I always think of that. Kristen Chenoweth is also 4'11".
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, back to the story. Murphy says that she's not the type to say she told you so, and Frank says it just like a brother. He's like, no, that's you. That's all you do. And Murphy reminds them that she told them that there needs to be objectivity in journalism. They've gotten too close, and Frank says that they need her to fire him. But Jim is concerned that Kyle knows where he lives.
It has to be Murphy because Kyle knows where Jim lives.
Oh, that's why. Okay. Oh. And Murphy says no, like she really thinks that he's beginning to sort of catch on. And Miles says, do we have to grovel? And Murphy has the biggest smile on their face, and they all grovel.
Oh, it's so
And
good.
she goes, okay, I'll fire him, you bunch of wusses. Then Kyle enters. No, close the door.
I wrote that too in all caps. I was like, is it because he's so tiny they can't tell? Or is
We'll
this when we
see.
start losing close the door?
I told you, I felt like we lost it. Like, I don't remember it being part of
I
the
love
whole
that
season.
now you're trying to I told you so after you've spent 10 episodes being like, I had no idea. Now you're like, see, I told you.
I am Murphy. And then Murphy, is, Jim goes, he found us. He found us. So Kyle clears the place. Everyone makes excuses to leave. You think that, Murphy is about to fire Kyle. And then this sort of good old boy shows up and says that he knows her. He recognizes her. She's on Moonlighting.
Well, the thing is, he says her name.
Oh, that's right. He does call her Murphy Brown,
Yeah.
and then says that she's on Moonlighting.
Because he's like, I see you on the TV all the time. She's like, yeah, FYI. And then he says, from Moonlighting.
Yeah. And this is interesting because it reminds me of a story. So this is playing actually on the fact that many, many people confuse Candice Bergen and Sybil Shepherd.
Yes.
It pisses me off.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of that
No, me neither.
because they're very distinct.
Yes.
They're blonde. They both used to be models.
Both altos.
Very distinct. And I watched Moonlighting through all the gauze.
I love that he says always nagging that guy with the funny hair, which is a good way to sum up Moonlighting.
Yeah, pretty much. Bruce Willis. So I actually once witnessed this happen and I could do nothing about it. And it's another great example of, yes, he got her name right, but not the other stuff.
Yep.
So I went to see Grant Shaw in a play called After Ashley with Anna Paquin. There was two guys in front of me and they're looking at the program before the show started and they start talking to each other. Oh yeah, Grant Shaw, he was in that show Murphy Brown. And the guy's like, oh, I don't know that show. Oh, with Candice Bergen, she was in the Last Picture Show. And then proceeds to name Sybil Shepherd's entire resume. And I just literally sitting right between them, behind them, wanting to be like, no. It's wrong. So it happens a lot.
It does.
So I kind of love the fact that they are playing on that's a thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a good joke.
I also appreciate that this episode has a lot of Southern accents.
You're
For,
right, it
for a
does.
DC
Well,
based
listen,
show.
DC is close to Virginia, which is
think
close
about-
to the South, which is the South.
Think about like the good old boy in the bar who swans over talking about, hey, I know you. You're the nagging lady with the like. It's so like we have Leslie Jordan, which granted could have been there because of the jurisdiction as far as the bank robbery and so on. But we have Faith Ford doing the lovely Louisiana accent, and then we have this guy who sounds very Southern, and then we have Leslie Jordan yelling at him, and it's just there's so much Southern in this episode. Well, and Kyle starts defending her as well, which is just, I love it. He says, she taught me to believe in myself. And he starts listing her problems. He's like, she's mean. She's a drunkard. She can't get a date to save her life. Murphy Brown is a saint, I tell you.
She's a saint. She's a saint, I tell you. She's a saint.
And I love the,
Terrible, terrible line reading. Oh my God, Lauren.
but the big guy just goes, I'm real sorry. I feel like a weenie.
I also love that Murphy's like, I'll take care of this. And he's like pretty uppity for a co-star.
Yes. Yeah, pretty uppity first co-star. But I love it because you see the sweetness that is Kyle.
Yeah.
And he loves her so much. And just him saying, she taught me to believe in myself. And for the first time, I finally do. And you're just like, and he's so tiny compared to this guy.
So now she can't fire him.
Now she can't fire him. So we
Yeah.
cut to FYI again. And Murphy is just like spelunking through the classifieds for a job for this guy. And everyone else is now looking as well. Corky brings up an air traffic control option. And everyone looks at her. She's like, well, I'm doing my best. Miles is reading Dear Abby. And Jim enters looking quite sad. He doesn't have a suit jacket on. We just see him in his white shirt. And there's a giant clear ink stain in the pocket.
Actually, I believe that there are subtle, beautiful lines on it.
Well, this shirt is from Milan.
Yes. This scene made me go, this is the Jim we know.
This is Jim.
Just reserved enough, but still a little fun.
And he has such tragedy in his life. And he says, they asked what happened. He says, Kyle gave me a pen. And you see this giant blue ink blot. And he says, it's from Milan. They measured me right down to the 1/4-inch difference of circumference between my left and my right wrist. And he's touching them. He just goes, I don't want him here anymore. I just don't want him. And just turns away in sadness.
It's one of my favorite sections of the whole thing. It's like, oh,
It's such great
he's
tragedy.
broken Jim.
He's broke.
He broke Jim.
I just wanted to see him like just put the hat back on, just like his life is over. So Murphy's like, "Come on!" and then finds an ad for telephone sales. No experience necessary. How could he screw that up? He has no experience. I can prove that. And she says, I'll call and give him a recommendation just in case. And she starts heading over to make the call. And then Miles is concerned that they're playing God with a man's life. Now, just for reference, she said she needed to get this figured out for him before he got back from the Xerox machine, which is where Kyle has been. So as Miles is saying that he's concerned that they're playing God with a man's life, the Xerox machine rolls by on a cart with two men still on fire. And Miles makes that crumpled Grant Shaw face.
and they all kind of follow it.
They all
don't
just follow the-
It's a really great visual
Oh,
gag.
it's great. Just this fiery Xerox machine and just goes, call. And that's when we see later at the elevator that someone is spraying for ants. So we've cut a little bit ahead. It's not a full the next day kind of cut, but we're at the elevator. We see them spraying for ants, and the doors open, and Murphy's in this mauve shirt, gray pants. He's got this great like scarfy, drapey top thing. I love it so much.
Except I wrote down, looks good on blondes. I would look terrible in it.
It's not a blonde thing. It's a skin tone
Okay,
thing. I'm
all right,
telling
all right,
you.
okay.
I'm gonna put you in the top.
Okay.
And this is when I fell madly in love with this audience. So Kyle comes in behind her, and he's in a just expensive designer suit. His hair is parted and put back. He looks so good, and the audience breaks the wall in the best way possible throughout the rest of this episode and cheers for him.
It's Fonzie.
Like later when he gets a job, they genuinely are cheering for him. It's not we're just laughing at the joke that just happened. This audience was so invested, and with what Leslie Jordan did, that when he walks out in that suit, they're cheering for how great he looks, and it's so heartwarming. And I swear you can see it on their faces too. Like it's lovely.
This episode would not work with any other actor.
No,
Would not work.
His ability to ground it in the sweetness and the sincerity, and yet still be this over the top ridiculous person. It's a testament to his career. This is why he has the career he has. So Murphy is looking very proud of the work that she's done. It's like their reverse.
She's so proud.
The reverse, My Fair Lady makeover moment. Frank tells him, "You're on fire," and he's like, "Oh, look at you, you're on fire." And Kyle's like, "Again?" And starts looking around. Because again,
He's like Rose Nyland.
yes, it's so good. And everyone is giving him these words, these pearls of wisdom. And Corky says she believes he'll have a bright and promising career ahead of him in the exciting world of telephone sales. And he says, he's like, "It's not right of me to abandon you." And Murphy says, "Yes, it is, Kyle. And though we'll all miss you here." He says, "You guys are the greatest. You just give and give and give." And she says this really lovely bit of advice, which I think everyone needs to hear. She says, "You are a valuable human being and an asset to any organization." And he goes, "Valuable human being, an asset." And it's so like, everyone, stitch this on a pillow.
Yeah.
I will make you a meme and post it on the Instagram.
And I don't think that they're lying.
No.
They do believe that.
Just
they
not there.
Just not there. Now, before we fade out into the next scene.
Oh, but I need to talk about Jim.
Oh, sorry.
Jim also comes in and gives him a piece of advice that he should always have an anecdote ready, in which Kyle says, "Oh, I can tell him about the time my cellmates tried to drown me in the toilet bowl."
Maybe don't start off with that one.
Maybe don't start off with that one.
That's the thing that's so sad and sweet about Kyle, is that because he was so young when he went to jail,
He doesn't know any better.
these are the only experiences he has.
Yeah, this is his life experience, is the jail.
So we fade out, and I can't prove this, but I think that they cut the end of the scene, probably for time. Because
Yeah, because it does fade out mid-conversation.
it's weird. And again, but then again, this episode has a lot of different sort of
Yep,
visual
exactly.
things that they're
Yes.
trying. But the reason I think this is because on the DVD, one of the pause pictures is from this episode.
Oh, it is.
And it's Kyle falling backwards into the elevator. There's a group of people behind it, and Steven Peterman is in the elevator.
Yes, I know that
Peterman,
picture.
the writer, guys, is in the elevator.
I'm going to say Steven Peterman, the writer guy.
Just in case, I said the writer, comma, guys.
I know, but that's what I'm going to call him now. Steven Peterman, the writer guy.
I get concerned sometimes that people aren't listening to all the episodes.
That's fair.
And then I'm going to reference things, and people are going to be totally. Because of the way that Leslie is falling backwards, I don't think it's a scene from behind the scenes or
No.
anything like that. And Steven does show up later on as an extra, as well as a speaking line in season
Yes.
2. He was an actor, so that's my guess.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well spotted.
We go into Frank on the phone to Doris. In no word, Doris, keep your fingers crossed and be strong.
They're all acting like they're in a delivery room.
They're acting like someone's dying.
Well, no, they're acting like they're in a hospital waiting room.
Yes.
Waiting for the good or the bad news.
Totally what this is based on.
Oh my
Totally.
god, it's so great, just turning the trope on its head.
They're all sitting. They're all around sort of the coffee area and the table, and Murphy is convinced that he won't get it. that he's going to kill her in her own office. And then Corky says, and then some idiot journalist will get him off. She's so mad.
She's so salty in this episode.
She
It's
really
the
is.
best. She says it with such disdain, like some idiot journalist will get him off.
She's also salty when she's trying to get to the ball.
I just appreciate that. I feel like I didn't give, and we've talked about this, I didn't give Corky the credit
did not know.
for years until I've been able to go back and really watch this, and I just have so much more love for her, and you see so much more of the character that she grew into, and you see that she always had these qualities. She's just young and she's figuring them out as she goes, but she's always been salty. She's always been smarter than they give her credit for. She's always been a fashionista.
No, this is the biggest surprise on the rewatch, honestly, is I see Corky completely differently now.
Yep.
He shows up, Kyle, and he didn't get the job. And then everyone just sort of collapses in one motion into the chairs, except for Jim. It's so great. And Jim is just like, this is going to kill Doris.
That's my favorite. This is gonna
And then there's this great little thing, and I've seen Leslie do this on other shows before, but it's still like such a small little detail is like he knocks himself against the side of the desk. Like
That's a thing he does.
He does that a lot, yeah. But I do love it because it is great body language and it's very specific to how his character is feeling. And when he says that, someone who's dressed the way he does is overqualified, I love, and I wish that we had more of like a close up on Murphy, but Frank just sort of like hits her in the arm.
Yeah,
and
like it's her fault.
Yeah, and she's like, and also Joe Ragabudo has his hand over
He's
his
straight
face.
up trying not to laugh.
He has to be.
He's straight up trying not to laugh. It's so, you can just see it because in another shot, he's still kind of covered and looking.
Total hand over his face.
I was like, there's no reason for his character to be doing that unless he's about to break.
Yeah, and then but it does make the moment when he sort of hits Murphy a little bit of like a more brotherly sort of like thing between the two of them. I love the fact that the whole time Miles's head is just down on the table. At one point in the speech that Kyle is giving, Miles just sort of gets up and goes over the coffee machine.
Well, I'm pretty sure it seems
sorry.
like he gets up in terror when he says that he'll be driving a truck.
Yes, totally.
Like he's terrified of the idea of being out on the streets.
And I meant to say copy machine, not coffee machine. I don't know why I said that. He pretty much says that he got himself a job as a water cooler guy, which is when the audience applauds.
They go crazy for him.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And he's like, I hate to leave you guys. I have to start now. And they're like, start.
Like, don't give it up.
Yeah.
He's like, the giving just never stops around
Yeah.
here.
He always thinks that they're pushing him away as this love.
He just believes he assumes the best in them.
And, he says goodbye and they usher him out and he gets in the elevator.
Oh, no, wait. We have to talk about the fact that his choice, he tenderly holds each person's hand individually for a single bye. One time. Bye. Next one. Bye.
Yeah, because it comes back later.
Oh, it's so precious. And then he gets in the elevator and forgets to hit the button.
Yeah, which I wonder was him or in the script.
He's just like, oh. And then as it goes, he goes, bye-bye.
And then the entire, office just like jumps for joy.
Literally jumps for joy.
Yeah.
So after that, we're in Murphy's townhouse, and she bursts into her living room in just like completely like she has won the day. She is victory. She hasn't put her arms in her coat sleeves. They're just like, it's draped like a cape over her. She's like, Elder, my man, the boss is home and she's on top of the world. And she announces that she has brownies, ice cream, and a copy of The Producers. If you promise not to talk during Springtime for Hitler, you can stay.
Sweets and Mel Brooks. I am Murphy Brown.
I was like, that is my best night ever. I was like, I have done that night so many times. And I have said, if you talk during these sections, you can't stay. Eldon is not going to stay and hang out with her because he is going out with Nikki and Maurice to a wet t-shirt night. And he asks if she wants to go. And her response is, in another life.
I also need to make note that I love that lamp behind her, the green and copper
The Tiffany
lamp.
one? Or a new one?
No, there's a actual like small lamp.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Everything, the greens and the browns are so well put together.
I mean, it's definitely right up my aesthetic alley in that regard. And as they're talking about it, we hear a crashing sound from inside the kitchen. She asks what it is, and Eldon shares that the water delivery guy has been there for about 20 minutes, and not counting the half hour that he spent trying to help him get his tie out of the cassette player in the truck. And yep, it's Kyle. We don't see him, but we do hear him say, "Hey, Mr. Painter, do you know where they keep the mop?" And Murphy grabs her shoes and just takes off as if she'll meet him in the car.
But I also love the fact that when he Eldon asks her if she wants to come to the Wet T-shirt concert, and she goes, "In another life." So this is not something that Murphy wants to do.
No, she's just getting out of there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed, but
Yes, I did.
as it fades out, we get a bumper of "bye."
Yeah, they knew what they had in this episode.
It was
They
so
knew
good.
that he was just a standpoint.
When that happened, I was
Standout
like,
point.
it's like they were on our podcast and trying to find a bumper for the end. I was just like, "Bye."
And again, they don't ever do that really again, as far
Nope.
as I can remember. So this is a
Yep.
very different episode.
Yep.
And speaking of very different people, since we wanted to highlight what great casting, and there's great casting for the entire series. So the casting director for the first 4 seasons was Andrea Cohen. She had done Hill Street Blues. She was a casting coordinator. She was a casting associate on Newhart. She went on to do Love and War. And she received 6 Outro Award nominations, which is the Casting Director Award. And she won twice in 1989 and 1990 for Murphy Brown. And she has some really interesting things. Now, this is from a book that I found called The Actors Encyclopedia of Casting Directors. It's technically from 1999. It has been updated. I don't think this interview has been updated. So I don't recommend the book to people who are looking to find out about casting directors for the now,
Okay.
if I may say. But she does have some interesting things to say about Murphy Brown, which I thought was great. So she says that deciding on whether to bring someone in for a pre-read, which is just to sort of, see if you like them before actually having them audition. She likes to see if people have regional credits. Also, if they've had maybe at least one sitcom training. But she says something that I thought was really great. She goes, "Often training alone is not enough. Knowing how to do comedy without pushing is something that has to be intuitive with the actor. It's almost like having a sixth sense. I don't think anyone had to teach the great actors on Murphy Brown or any top sitcom how to be funny. Acting for sitcom is an art that some learn immediately, others eventually, and others never."
So accurate.
Yeah. And she cast some really amazing people in the first 4 years. Love and War is also a really great cast show. And that particular thing, I think, fits into Leslie Jordan.
Absolutely. That's just really seeing the potential of someone and when they walk in, they have it or they don't, especially for a guest star, because you don't have time for somebody to grow into a role.
No. And, you have a week to do this, and the script is changing every day.
And they're informing the character.
And multi-camera is a very different form of acting.
Yes. And also looking at, you look at Leslie Jordan, and there's no way that this character and the way he plays him is so quintessentially Leslie Jordan that there's no way that they were asking for these exact specifics in this character. So having an eye for what this actor could bring to elevate a role as well.
Yeah, he was so unique that they had to bring him into this role.
Yeah, they had to have him.
Yeah, and now people say, "Bring me a Leslie Jordan type."
Yep.
Or "Bring me Leslie Jordan."
Bring me Leslie Jordan for my birthday in March. Thank you, everyone.
And done.
And done.
So why are you not following us on social media?
I hope that you are.
Please.
It would be lovely if you did. And if you do, but you feel like a friend would enjoy it as well, please tell them about it.
Yeah. In fact, that's what you should do.
Yes.
Tell at least one person about the podcast, and then we will double our audience.
Oh my goodness. Imagine. So on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we are Murphy Brown Pod.
And our website is murphybrownpod.com, where you can get information on back episodes. We have show notes under each episode, little extras you can read about.
Sometimes a picture, maybe.
You can also have a link to our Spotify playlist, Murphy Brown Empowerment playlist. Have a dance party.
Yes.
It's great music from and inspired by Murphy Brown.
Ooh, and on our website, under those show notes, you may see something that we didn't quite address a couple episodes ago, which was that when we talked about during And So He Goes, we mentioned that Frank makes a joke about how the people from the Daily Planet aren't there. Our very first episode at the offices of Antenna TV was in the Daily News building, aka the Daily Planet.
I know. I completely forgot about that.
And I was like, wait a second, we were in the Daily Planet. So I posted a picture that we took while there, but we wanted to stay professional. I asked someone to take a picture of us while we were there. So just imagine that our pretty faces are also in front of that globe.
Yes, we didn't. Although I've never been a fan of myself in pictures. I always took postcard pictures on vacation. I didn't put myself in pictures.
I'm just really bad at posing in a classy fashion. I tend to make a stupid face.
Yeah.
Too many headshot photo shoots. Anywho, we would also love to hear how Murphy Brown has impacted you. And you can do that in 2 different ways. we would love if you could send us a voice message. It can either be a voicemail, 1 to 2 minutes, or it can be a voice memo, 1 to 2 minutes. We just don't want to have to cut around, so we can make it fit. If you want to call and leave us a voicemail, the phone number is 646-450-6902.
And you don't have to leave your name if you don't want to, or you can. It's totally up to you.
And if you want to record a voice memo on your phone or on your recording device and email that to us, the email is murphybrownpod@gmail.com.
So we will see you next week with Off the Job Experience, although we're working on some cool interviews. So we might actually have an interview next week, which will be exciting.
Yes.
Or we've already had the interview.
Oh, we're so good at this. We don't even know what we're doing.
We don't.
But the next official Murphy Brown episode will be season 1, episode 11, Off the Job Experience.
And we'll see you next week
For another edition of FYI.
the Murphy Brown Podcast.
Bye.